Alright guys, welcome back to another update on the VR5. As I mentioned in the last video, I've taken the 20 valve VR5 out and the 10 valve is now in. This is just a spare engine I'm using for mock-up, so it does look quite dirty, but I'm not sure if you can see there's a bit more space on the back than there was with the 20 valve because of the lack of the VVT. But anyway, we're getting there. So let's start on the hot side. So I fabbed up this turbo manifold out of some Schedule 40 Weldels. I used 3 T-pieces and then 2 90 degrees for the ends. It's just tacked together at the moment, again just for fit up, and I've just tacked on a T3 flange, and then I don't know if you can see down there's another 90 degrees coming off the end of this 90 degrees, which is for the wastegate. And that just goes up to a wastegate flange just there for the 38mm wastegate. Then we've got a GT3071R Garrett and a 3-inch downpipe, which is quite close to the firewall, so I might move that flange 10mm to the right. Wastegate's got enough room, so I'm not sure if I'm going to be leery and come 90 degrees and up at the bonnet, or be conservative and go 90 degrees and go down to the floor. We'll have to see. Might do both. Started to plumb the oil and water lines, so the drain comes out at 45 degrees and we'll go down to the oil pan, and we've got the oil inlet which I'll take off the filler housing, and then we've got water in and out. So the water in will come from the outlet on the block, which is normally for the oil cooler, which is, the light's probably really bad, but it's, I can't even see it. Oh, it's just here. So normally the water comes out of here and goes into the oil cooler and then goes back into the block via the crack pipe. But I will exit the water from here and then go up and round to the expansion tank, which will just sit over there. And that's kind of it. Got a little HKS air filter, and the output for the turbo is just there, so it will literally just come round, go into the intercooler, out the dump valve as and when, and then kind of curl up round here and go into the inlet manifold. So that brings us quite nicely round to the cold side. So we've got a VR6 lower inlet manifold, which I've cut the 6-cylinder off. This is a VR5 fuel rail, and thankfully it all matches up. And then I've got this inlet manifold which I've been working with. It's basically from a 1JZ. So I've cut the end off it, kind of cut the flange off it, and then made my own little flange which I need to weld up. But so far so good, it's in. And I've just made this bracket here, which I need to weld on so I can bolt up the VR5 throttle body. Alternator wise, I've had to move it down a little bit just to clear the bottom of the inlet manifold, but it's still got enough clearance in terms of the chassis legs. And then in the previous videos I mentioned I've had to move the power steering pump simply because it sits quite close to the subframe and the steering rack, but that's a problem for another day. Another interesting problem is this is the thermostat housing, which normally sits on the back of the head, so it sits out way too far and it's never going to go in there without cutting, I don't know, 20 centimeters out the bulkhead. So I'm going to need to move this. So luckily on the VR6 version of this thermostat housing, this section of it you can actually rotate round 180 degrees. Some of them on the 24 valves and stuff, they're slightly tapered, so you can't actually rotate this round, or they're slightly offset, the bolt holes are offset, so you can't rotate it around 180 degrees. But thankfully on the 12 valve VR6s you can. So normally it would bolt to the back of the head like so. Imagine the head's over here and that part would be facing that way, and the crack pipe would come along the side of the block and then go into here. but I need to basically move this out the way. So I've rotated this part 180 degrees, so now it will face the crack pipe like so, and then I'll have to come off the back of the head, come round 180 degrees and go into the thermostat housing. So this will actually sit kind of down here, and then the coolant pipes will run literally kind of, one will go through there up into the top of the rad, and the other one will come down across the rad to the lower part of the rad. And what else to note on that one? What I've used in terms of flange, or what I will be using, is this. So this is actually part of a 24 valve VR6 head, because again, because of the VVT, this part is separate on the head. If you've ever seen it, the differences between the head, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I was able to cut that off the actual timing case cover, so this will bolt nicely to that as intended. And then all I'll also simply do is just weld a 90-degree bend off there, and then another 90-degree bend to go into the back of the head, and that fixes that problem. And then cool packs, they normally sit on the back of the head. That's not going to work, so I'm going to move them to the front of the head. I don't think there'll be a problem with heat, even though it's behind the radiator, simply because there should be cold air going through there, so we'll see. And I guess, yeah, the next bit is intercooler and rad. So normally the radiator sits along here. Now I like the idea of moving the radiator to the boot to get some weight over the rear axle and to make the engine bay a bit simpler. I don't really want to deal with the complexity of that right now, but I do like the safety aspect of moving the radiator away from kind of the crash zone, because any light tap on the front and you either screw up your intercooler or your radiator or both. So I've moved it back a foot and a bit. It's not a massive difference, but it's enough to kind of get it out of the way, so if I have a little tap in the corner, all this stays safe. And arguably it does move the weight slightly back, which is always a bonus. So obviously I'll have to be on point in terms of creating some ducting to make sure air flows through here and flows through both of these two. Bear with me, phone. Right, sorry for that. Where were we? Ducting. So yeah, I need to make sure that ducting's on point, so any air flowing through the front goes through both of the cores. So I'm going to make sure that this is butted right up against the bonnet with some kind of foam to seal it up against the bonnet, and that will stop any air flowing over the top. And then I'm just going to have to do some kind of sheets of either aluminium or some plastic or something to just block the airflow coming out the sides and the bottom as well, just to again make sure any air flowing through only goes through the core. And I think that's kind of it in terms of an update. The only other thing to mention is the engine sump. Now on the VR5s, the sumps are aluminium, which isn't a problem as such, making space and welding it up now, because I'm starting to learn how to TIG, so that's an option. But this is a Passat sump, VR5, and you can see it's got this little wing on the end. Now this is a later 20 valve sump. The early 10 valves, which is one down there, didn't have this extra wing on the side, so clearly at some point VW have realised maybe they've got some oil starvation issues or something, so they've added some extra capacity on the later valves. So I'm intending to do the same, but rather than the hassle of trying to weld one out of aluminium, I'm going to use a steel one. Now unfortunately none of the VR5s came with steel sumps, but the VR6 did, and oh, the lighting is crap. 1 second. Right, that's actually a cut down VR6 sump, which obviously has just clearance to get around the subframe. So the bolt holes are the exact same on the VR6. Obviously the sump is a little bit bigger, so I can literally just cut a section at the middle, shorten it, and it kind of works. So that's going to make my life making a sump a bit easier. So I'll start off with I'll buy a couple of brand new sumps, and then basically weld some boxes, some wings on both sides just to give me some extra capacity, and then build some baffles and stuff into there, just to make sure I've got no starvation issues, because obviously this sump is meant for a front wheel drive transverse configuration engine, not longitudinally mounted, so the baffles and stuff will be different and I don't want to have issues, so that's going to require some work. And the only annoying bit is the oil pickup sits kind of in the middle of the engine. It would make my life so much easier if it sat at the back, but I don't really fancy modifying the oil pump to try and move it around, so I'm going to have like a lower flat section at the front, this lower flat section at the back, and then a kind of little hump in the bottom. So I need to make as much capacity in the middle bit as possible and come out, because I'm losing that extra capacity at the front, and obviously baffle it accordingly, but it should be doable. And then put the appropriate windage trays and stuff like that, just to make sure oil's not sloshing around in the sump. But that's where we are. Progress made. The next week or so, I'm going to be head down just trying to figure out how to TIG weld. So there's going to be probably no progress. I don't think you guys want to see videos of me messing up a load of aluminium trying to weld it, but hopefully in about a week's time I'll be proficient enough to stick 2 bits of alley pipe together, which is kind of the idea. And then hopefully if I can master, I won't say master, that's probably a bit far-fetched, if I can figure out how to weld thin stuff, when I get to welding the thicker stuff, it shouldn't be too much of a drama, because I've got quite a bit of TIG welding to do. Obviously there's all the intercooler pipes, inlet manifolds, bits on the throttle body. I wouldn't mind tigging the exhaust manifold just for practice. Then the downpipes, exhaust, there's a fair old bit, and that's just on this one. There's a whole heap to do on the Corrado. Yeah, I need to get tigging as quickly as possible. Right, that's it for me today, guys. I've waffled on for long enough, but as always, thanks for watching, and if you've liked it, feel free to give it a thumbs up. If you want to see some more, hit subscribe, and I will catch you up on the next one. Cheers, bye.